Let's talk about hard mode and monk mode for quitting porn, why this actually isn't extreme enough and why I think you should go Spartan mode, but also why I generally don't recommend this kind of approach. I've mentioned before about the problem of letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. And here I want to expand on that because for this topic, it's really, really important. So let's consider what would be the perfect way to quit porn. And this is where the ideas you might be familiar with of like hard mode and monk mode come in, right? In the nofap community, you sometimes have this idea of different levels, which starts with easy mode, where all you do is quit porn, and ends with monk mode, where you quit porn, you quit masturbation, you don't have sex, you don't orgasm, you don't use social media, you basically don't do anything pleasurable. And of course, the idea is that the harder it is, the more beneficial it is. So doing monk mode is better and more badass, but it's also like better for your recovery and for your healing than if you do easy mode. This is somewhat true, but if anything, it's not taken far enough. So if we ask ourselves, what is the perfect way? What is the perfect way to quit porn? What would be the perfect routine to quit porn and heal your brain from this addiction as quickly as possible? And for this, I'm introducing Spartan mode. So first of all, the premise here is the quit by healing premise, where the goal is to actually heal your brain and heal yourself from the porn addiction, not just be the champion willpower, I'm coping and keeping myself away from porn even though I still want it, right? You want to go through the healing process so that you end up at the point where you're no longer interested in porn. That's the goal. So what's the perfect way to do that? There are basically 4 areas we need to address. 1 is we need to interrupt and stop the porn habit. 2, we need to address the underlying issues. We need to heal from the psychological pain, the sexual shame, and so on that made us a porn addict in the first place. Number 3, we need to start getting healthy sources of dopamine. And 4, there are lifestyle factors which accelerate the healing. And this also includes essentially becoming an overall badass. So not just quitting porn, but also becoming a fulfilled, confident, competent man, because that's one of the things you need in order to get the kind of admiration and desire from women and attention that you want and for which porn is a replacement. So here is the Spartan mode protocol for how to accomplish all 4 things as quickly and efficiently as possible. Here's a quick summary of the Spartan mode protocol. I'll just run through this quickly with minimal explanations. If you want the full breakdown of this protocol with the explanations of why all of these things are in place, I have a separate video just about Spartan mode that you can watch on YouTube, and I will also link to that in the description. So the quick version is Spartan mode is the following steps. Number 1, quit porn. Of course, you need to stop watching porn and go completely cold turkey on that. Number 2, you also need to quit social media and digital distractions and all other types of dopamine dispensers that you might be currently using or be addicted to. Number 3, you stop consuming entertainment. So no Netflix, no movies, no video games, none of that stuff. So we're basically removing all of these sources of quick, instant gratification dopamine. Then number 4, you add 2 training sessions to your day. You start your day early in the morning with a high intensity training session, something like going to the gym, lifting heavy weights. And then you add a second training session later in the day, which would be either a lower intensity or more skill-based training session. So you train martial arts, you do yoga, you take a dance class, you go climbing. That's the kind of thing you would do in the afternoon. But every single day you do these 2 training sessions. Number 5, you have to have at least 1 big, challenging, ambitious project that you're working on. This is some kind of a project like building your own business or building a side hustle or anything else that is deeply engaging to you, that takes up a lot of your time, takes up a lot of attention, and challenges you, where you have to really go outside your comfort zone. You have to solve problems. You have to do things and build things in the real world. Number 6, you get 15 minutes of sunlight at 2 specific points of the day. Every morning, close to sunrise, you want to be outside and be exposed to sunlight for at least 15 minutes. And every evening, close to sunset, again, you want to have that sunlight exposure. Number 7, you eliminate artificial light, especially light from screens after 9 p.m. Number 8, you want to prioritize sleep and make sure that you always get enough sleep and give yourself at least 8 hours of time in bed so that your body has a chance to get up to 8 hours of sleep, and it might have to be even more than that. Now, the two things we did before this, the light exposure early and late in the day and no artificial light after 9 p.m., make a huge difference to that. It's not the only thing this affects, but you'll see that your sleep becomes 100 times better when you start doing this with your light exposure. Number 9, every day you do a 20-minute meditation session. This can be a simple mindfulness meditation where you just sit in stillness for 20 minutes and follow your breath with your attention. Number 10, every day in the evening, I recommend as one of the last things before you go to bed, you do an introspective writing session. You do this with pen and paper, maybe with candlelight or just in a very dimly lit room. And you use this time to write things off your chest, but also this is where you do your shadow work. So you use this time to really confront your inner demons, dig into your underlying issues and so on. The introspective writing is not always a pleasant thing to do, but it's a really important part of the healing process. So we're doing it every single day in the evening. Number 11, once a week, spend at least 3 hours completely disconnected in nature. So you're not on your phone, you're not listening to a podcast or listening to music. You basically leave all your electronic devices at home. You go into nature, you just walk around in nature, or you sit in nature and just enjoy the stillness or listen to the birds or whatever. Most people have no idea how much of an effect this has. Most people completely underestimate this, but this makes a huge difference. So at least once a week, at least 3 hours completely disconnected in nature. Number 12, you cut out all sugar and sweeteners. So you're not eating sugary foods, you're not eating sweetened foods or drinking sodas or anything like that. Number 13, you cut out all processed and ultra-processed and highly stimulating foods from your diet, which basically means you only eat whole foods. And together with these 2 points comes obviously eliminating all kinds of stimulants and drugs and so on. So no coffee, no alcohol, no cigarettes, none of that stuff. And then finally, number 14, we have some supplementation that you can also add. There are some things you can do to boost that healing process and boost your brain's positive adaptation. And for details on that, once again, let me just refer to the full video where I run through all of these steps with deeper explanations linked in the description. So that will be the Spartan protocol. Do this for 30 days. That will be the Spartan challenge. Every element of this is designed to make your healing process and your transformation as effective and efficient as possible. And even just 30 days of doing this will completely transform you. I mean, can you imagine how much this would change you? Like, you're giving yourself a total dopamine reset. You're replacing tons of bad habits with tons of good habits. And you're putting yourself hormonally and metabolically in the ideal state for rewiring and healing your brain and changing yourself in general. This protocol puts you in the optimal state for healing. This will also improve your mood, drastically improve your energy levels, regulate your nervous system, and much, much more. Another factor here which is super important is that it flips you from consumer to creator mode. It basically cuts out almost all consumption and it puts you in a creator role instead. And this is actually a really key component for creating some of the deeper changes that lead to real healing. And it's also pretty much a cheat code for living an awesome life. And of course, an important part of this is we're doing all this stuff to put you in this optimal state and change your habits. But at the same time, you have a daily habit of actually working through the underlying issues, of actually working through difficult emotions that come up and so on. And you'd find that this happens during your meditation and writing sessions. You'd probably also find that it happens during your nature walks. So, your morning 15 minutes walking outside, soaking in the sunlight, and your several hours in nature once a week. You probably find that there quite a lot of the psychological processing happens as well. Quite a lot of stuff comes up that you may be later process further in a writing session. And I'm just mentioning this because if you've never done something like this before, you probably underestimate that internal introspective work component by quite a lot. So all of this comes together in one single protocol. And I mean, if you did this for a year, you would be a completely changed man. It's probably impossible to do this for a whole year and not become successful in pretty much every area of life. So, if this is so powerful, why isn't it my first and only recommendation? Why is Quit by Healing about anything other than just telling people, hey, do this. Here's the protocol. Do this for 30 days and you'll be a changed person. Well, here, bear with me, because what I'm about to share with you is a really important concept and something that most people miss all their lives. There's a difference between the individual and the collective. So, for you as an individual, if you come to me and say, hey, I want to do the Spartan challenge, all I can tell you is go for it. do it. I believe in you. I want to see you succeed, and I've got your back. I 100% encourage you, especially if you're a young guy and you just recently realized, hey, my life is going nowhere, and also this porn habit is really not good. It seems like I'm addicted. I need to do something about this. And you're not afraid of a challenge, and you're like, yes, I want to take this on head on. I'm going to do the Spartan challenge. All I can say is go for it, bro. I wish you the best. But I also have to consider the collective. Out of the hundreds or thousands and sometimes even millions of people that come across my messages on the different channels where I publish, I know that the Spartan challenge is not suitable for most of them. I know that out of 1,000 guys who try this, there's like 900, maybe 990, maybe even 999 of them will fail. I know that in reality, the majority of people who would attempt to do a protocol like this wouldn't even make it through the first day. And why is that? Well, in short, it's because change is hard, and there's more to changing yourself than just deciding to do it. This is what I call the implementation gap. It's the gap between theory and practice. Like, think about it. If you have a best-selling book on how to lose weight that explains everything you need to know in order to feed yourself healthy food and be in a caloric deficit until you're at your goal weight, like, that best-selling book might have sold 1 million copies. But does that mean that 1 million people followed the ideas in that book and lost weight? No. Probably most people who bought that book didn't lose weight. But it's not because the book doesn't work. It's not because the basic idea that's laid out is like, hey, eat these kinds of foods and not those kinds of foods. Make sure you're in a caloric deficit and you lose weight. It's not that that's wrong. The recipe, the protocol that's laid out in the book works. The problem is in the implementation. The problem is that there's a huge difference between having the right recipe, having the steps is like, here, do this to lose weight, versus actually doing it. Once it comes to actually doing it, once it comes to implementation, there's all this other stuff you have to deal with that maybe isn't covered in the theory at all, such as what do you do on a really bad day when you really don't feel like following the damn recipe. So there's a difference, an important difference, between learning something that is factually correct and actually making it a reality. That is the implementation gap. And in reality, that's where all the work lies. Look, we'd all like to think that all we need is the correct recipe, right? All we need is someone to tell us the steps, and then we can do it. We can build the perfect body, build the $1 million business, build the perfect life. But the reality is the recipe is rarely the problem. It's not that you don't know the steps, it's that you don't know how to implement the steps. It's not that you don't know what to do, it's that you don't know how to get yourself to do it. And once you try to get yourself to do it, you have resistance, you have laziness to deal with, you have mood swings to deal with, you have good days and bad days to deal with, you have fear of failure, fear of success, self-sabotage, you have all this stuff that comes up and makes it much harder than just, hey, follow these steps. Now, this is important. Here's the part that most people miss all their lives, and it's an absolute game changer, so pay attention to this. In reality, taking the implementation gap into account, the long way around is often the shortest way to success. All right, let me repeat that. The long way around is often the fastest way to the result that you want. And conversely, the shortcut, the super fast way to success, is usually the most common cause of failure. See, this brings me back to the perfect being the enemy of the good. Most people are always looking for the perfect plan, for the fastest way to get X. And then they try to execute that plan, fail, give up for a while, try again, fail again, give up for a while, and so on. It's stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. So you try to follow the ultimate highly optimized perfect bodybuilding plan to build super fast muscle, but it's too intense, you can't stick with it, and you give up. You try to follow the crash diet to get lean super fast, but you can't stick with it, and then you gain all the way back plus some more. You try to become a millionaire overnight, so you buy some get-rich-quick course, which turns out to be a scam, and it fails, and you give up, and then later, you try again, you fail again, you try again, you fail again, you try again, you fail again. You're stuck in an endless cycle of frustration. You're expending lots of effort, but you're not getting anywhere. In a situation like this, the slow approach is the fast approach. The long way around is the shortcut. Instead of following the super perfect bodybuilding plan that you can't stick to, if you just build the habit of going to the gym and doing an imperfect but good enough workout, and you stick to that habit long enough, you get to the result much faster. And by the way, this is also how a lot of scams work. This is how a lot of scammers will scam you. Right? They will tell you, hey, buy my course for the guaranteed way to build $1 million business, and it costs $10,000 or something like that, right? You give them the money, and they give you a set of instructions, which they can say, well, theoretically this works, right? If you apply yourself and you work on this for at least 10 hours a day for at least a year, and you follow all these steps, and there's like 1,000 steps, right? Then you will have $1 million business. And then what happens when you can't do it? You don't stick to it. And then you blame yourself for failing. They can blame you for failing, and they can then sell you the next product next year. This is why I will never charge money for a set of instructions. I will never ask you to pay me and then tell you, okay, follow these steps. That's it. That's what you get for the money. That is nonsense. The set of steps will always be free. When you pay me to close the implementation gap. You pay me to turn you into the kind of person who actually follows the steps. That's the tricky part. So bringing this back to quitting porn. Although Spartan Mode is the perfect way to quit porn, in all likelihood, if you try to do it, you won't be able to stick to the protocol. And this is why I recommend the things I do. This is why I generally recommend a slower and less intense approach. I believe this really all comes down to skill, and it's a matter of training. So if you try something like the Spartan protocol and you don't manage to stick with it, it basically means that you currently don't have the skill level needed to adhere to a protocol like this, but you can learn it. So just like you can't just show up to a triathlon and take part and complete it because you don't have that fitness level and that skill level yet, but you can go and train, right? You can train to improve your aerobic endurance. You can train to learn better running technique, better swimming technique, and so on. And then you can go to a triathlon and you can do it. I think this is basically the same. You currently don't have the level of habit design skills, the level of self-mastery, and the level of discipline needed to stick with something like the Spartan protocol. But you can learn all of those things. And the way to learn it is what seems to be the slow way around. This is why I recommend that you start by listing out all of your triggers when it comes to porn, and you make environment changes so that you can avoid being triggered and you don't need as much willpower. This is why I recommend that you count your porn-free days and your masturbation-free days separately. And if you have to masturbate in order to stay away from porn, that's fine, because porn is the real problem. This is why I recommend that you slowly add healthy, good dopamine habits to your life, but generally don't try to add them all at once. And it's also why in the Shadow Work course, which you can get for free in my Discord, I start with relatively mild introductory exercises and then ramp it up slowly to the more intense stuff, because that just has a higher success rate than if you jump straight into the deep end. And this is why the quit by healing approach is not the most intense, most extreme approach, and it is not the quote-unquote perfect way to quit porn. It's just the way that you will actually follow that will actually get you to the result. I'd love to hear your input on this and your experience with trying maybe more extreme and less extreme approaches to quitting porn as well as other things in life. So leave a comment by going to the YouTube video or by going to anchor.fm/QbH. That's anchor.fm/QbH for Quit by Healing. And you can press the message button there and send me a voice message with your feedback or with a question that I will answer in a future episode.